What really happens when we die? Is this idea of an afterlife, of immortality? Is it all just wishful thinking like Carl Sagan suggested? Well, today we're diving into a story that tackles that exact question. But not with science, no. This is a story about love, loss, and a life that just refuses to end.
So the story we're getting into is called The Soul of the Rose, and it's just this incredible narrative that flips the whole idea of immortality on its head. It asks, what if living forever wasn't a gift, but a curse? What does it really mean to live forever?
All right, so let's set the scene. It's 2022, we're in a 24-hour diner in San Francisco, and this is where we meet our first character, a line cook named Will. And there's something off about him. He seems completely, almost unnervingly detached from everything and everyone around him. Okay, picture this. A guy with a gun bursts into the diner. Everybody freaks out, they're hiding, running, but not well. He doesn't even flinch. Instead, he looks at this gunman, and he doesn't see a criminal. He sees someone who's hungry, who's desperate. And so he does the only thing that makes any sense to him. He starts cooking. And right there, that quote tells you everything you need to know about Will's mindset. He completely de-escalates this terrifying situation, not with fear, but with empathy and a plate of strawberry pancakes. I mean, it's clear this guy is operating on a level of understanding that was, well, centuries in the making. Now, Will wasn't the only person who stayed calm. There was a teenager sitting in a corner booth who didn't run. And he's the one who's about to blow this whole story wide open. His name is Eddie. Eddie walks up to Will and says something absolutely stunning. He tells him, "You've changed." He says that 100 years ago, on a battlefield in World War I, Will was this cold, heartless man who just stood there and watched a young officer die, didn't even lift a finger to help. So how could Eddie possibly know that? Well, because that dying officer, that was him. So here's the incredible twist. Eddie reincarnates. He lives a life, he dies young, and then he comes back again and again. And in so many of those lives, he crosses paths with the very same man, the ageless, unchanging Will. I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows you the staggering scope of Eddie's journey, chasing this man across centuries, just trying to understand their connection. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does he remember all of this? Well, Eddie has this really powerful way of explaining it. He says each of his lives is like a new drawing on a dry erase board. When he dies, the board gets wiped clean. But you know how there are always those faint marker stains left behind? He calls those afterimages. And that's how he holds on to pieces of who he was before and who he's trying to save now. Now, across all of these centuries, Eddie isn't just aimlessly wandering. No, he's on a mission. He's actively seeking out wisdom, studying different philosophies about life and death and the soul, trying to figure out what in the world is happening to him and to Will. His first stop, way back in the 19th century, takes him to a Taoist monk. And there, he learns that true immortality isn't about not dying. It's about embracing death as a way to rejoin the universe. And here's the key takeaway. Memories are like tethers. They connect our souls to each other. And if that tether gets broken, a soul can get lost. Later, as a young boy in New York City, he learns from a rabbi that selfishness is what cuts us off from life itself. And if you commit too many selfish acts, you can end up in a state that's way worse than death, a body that's still walking around, but is completely, utterly soulless. And the final piece of the puzzle comes from a Romani card reader. She teaches him that the death card in the tarot deck, it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean a literal end. It actually symbolizes change, transformation, and rebirth. It's a cycle, with the rose representing the beauty and, yes, the immortality found right there in that process of change. Okay, so all of this philosophy, it's not just talk. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are literally, physically happening to Will. His self-imposed loneliness, his refusal to connect with anyone, it's having a truly horrifying effect on him. Remember that rabbi's story about the golem? Well, it becomes this chillingly perfect metaphor for what's happening to Will. A man made of mud that's slowly hardening into stone, dead but also alive. A monster, really, of his own making. And again, this isn't just a metaphor. Will's body is physically petrifying. His joints are locking up, he can barely move, his skin feels like rock. His refusal to feel, to connect, to grieve, it's turning him into a living statue. As Eddie warns him, time is catching up. All right, hit fast forward. We jump ahead to the year 2052. Decades have gone by. Will is now completely immobile, a medical enigma, locked away in a facility in Chicago, and this is where Eddie finds him, for one last time. So here's the setup for the final showdown. Will is completely trapped inside his own body. His nurse, a woman named Juliet, feels this weird, unexplainable pull toward him. And her 12-year-old son? Yep, that's Eddie. He knows this is his last chance. He has to break the cycle, once and for all. Eddie finds Will's stone-like body, and he starts to talk. But he doesn't talk about reincarnation or philosophy. He talks about memories. Really specific, sensory memories from his very first life, back in 17th century England. A life he remembers not like a faint afterimage, but one that's written in permanent ink. And then he drops the truth, the real reason behind Will's endless life and Eddie's endless cycle of rebirth. They weren't just two strangers connected by fate. They were father and son. Will's Bakerson died from a fever back in 1655, and Will's grief, his refusal to let his son go, it was so powerful, it literally broke the rules of nature. It trapped his son's soul on earth and cursed him to a life without end.
And just like that, Eddie's plea finally shatters centuries of self-imposed stone. And in this final, beautiful act, the story reveals its profound message about what it truly means to be immortal. The second that Will finally accepts his son's death, that he chooses connection over his grief, the curse is broken. He starts to age again, he marries Juliet, he gets to raise Eddie, his son, reborn, and he lives a complete, messy, beautiful human life, filled with the very love he ran from for so long.
So what's the big lesson here? Well, the story basically gives us this roadmap to what true immortality is. It's not about not dying. It's about living a life so full of moments and deep connections that your love, your legacy, that's what lives on in the people you leave behind.
And that really leaves you with a powerful thought, doesn't it? Maybe the point isn't to make our own lives last forever, but to create a love that does. The story completely redefines immortality, moving it away from individual survival to the enduring power of our connections. And in the end, this one recurring line, first spoken between Will and his wife in the 1600s, and then whispered by an old Will to Juliet as he finally passes away, it becomes the story's ultimate promise. It's not about being physically here forever. It's about a love so strong it creates a presence that transcends even death itself.